Hey, good morning. Patricia Murphy here. It's Saturday. This is Seattle Now. Today we're bringing you the best from the KUOW Newsroom. First, nearly 3 years after a young man died by suicide in Klickitat County Jail in south central Washington, a new audit finds conditions are better. That's after county commissioners removed the jail from the sheriff's oversight. Lawyers for the family say their settlement helped spur these changes. Amy Radel explains.
Melissa Howdepat has heard anecdotes about the booking process at the Klickitat County Jail in Goldendale in recent years, and they're positive. People describe in-depth screenings checking into their substance use and mental health.
I feel a little bit better about the safety of people in jail now, in this jail.
Ever since her son died by suicide while in fentanyl withdrawal in that jail, Howdepat has campaigned for changes. She takes posters of Ivan to community events. She worked to pass a state law warning young people about the dangers of fentanyl. And she obtained a $2 million settlement with Klickitat County that required jail improvements.
There's a lot of ways that we are still honoring him, and doing this settlement was one of them.
She says when Ivan was arrested for violating probation, multiple relatives told deputies he suffered from addiction and needed to be closely monitored. But jail officials failed to catch signs that he was at risk for suicide. His death and the near-death condition of another woman, both enrolled members of the Yakima Nation, sparked criticism of the jail's leadership, Sheriff Bob Songer and Jail Supervisor Lauren Culp. County commissioners looked at closing the jail entirely and sending inmates to Oregon. But ultimately, Howdepat says they kept the jail under new leadership.
I was really, really happy with the fact that they took the jail away from the sheriff. That decision was huge to me.
Bill Franz is the new jail administrator. He previously worked for the Washington State Department of Corrections. The audit says the jail's organization and professionalism have improved under his guidance. Franz says his goal is to make the inmates' experience not miserable.
Oftentimes a correctional officer will go to their job and they look for what's wrong instead of looking for what's right and rewarding that.
France has installed systems in jail cells to monitor inmates' vital signs and set off an alarm if something changes. He's also planning to build a more private area for intake.
So that an officer can do a screening where there won't be a police officer standing over their shoulder, right? Maybe the arresting officer.
He hopes more privacy will help people be as honest as possible about drug use and other safety risks. France says he's also increased jail cell inspections. Earlier this year, they found a ligature for hanging in one of them. The inmate has 2 young daughters and was despairing about his long upcoming prison sentence.
We talked extensively to him about things and came up with strategies for him to play a role that he wants in his children's life.
France says they facilitated a visit with the inmate's family before he left. The main concern raised in the audit was a lack of medical oversight. The jail has a physician's assistant who normally visits every other week. Attorney Corinne Sebrin helped negotiate the settlement. She says she wants the county to step up and increase that.
They know that certainly the spirit of the settlement agreement was to get more on-site medical care.
But Administrator France says it's not that simple when local hospitals can't find enough providers either.
Even if I had the money to do it, I don't know that I could find a professional that would fill the role.
Gabe Galanda is an indigenous civil rights attorney in Seattle whose firm represented the Howdepat family. He's glad his lawsuits are bringing changes, but with the 4th highest rate of jail deaths in the nation, Galanda says Washington needs more comprehensive oversight.
At present, and I'm really sad to say this, the primary way for jail reform to be accomplished in this state is through litigation because of the inaction of state lawmakers.
In 2023, a task force recommended new statewide standards for jails, but the sponsor, Senator Rebecca Saldana, told the news site Investigate West that lawmakers have lacked the political will to enact them. Meanwhile, another lawsuit by grieving parents resulted in the closure of the jail in Garfield County, where officials said they couldn't afford the needed improvements. Melissa Howdepat and Administrator Bill France are in agreement that keeping the jail open in Klickitat County has given inmates more community support. Amy Radel, KUOW News.
Next, the Cayuse, Umatilla, and Walla Walla tribes view their traditional food as something that deserves respect. So they're working to save food from the dump. Northwest Public Broadcasting's Anna King has this story about how these tribes are striving to repurpose their food waste.
Colleen Sanders pops a 5-gallon bucket. Inside, decomposing food waste. She digs in with both hands. We're on the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation in Northeast Oregon.
So you can see we have, fry bread that somebody didn't want to eat. We have some meat that people didn't want, lots of bread. And there it is. There's some celery. There's some of our beautiful sister.
These Columbia Plateau tribes believe they return to the earth when they die, and that foods like wild celery and salmon are their relatives coming back. So this food is sacred. Sanders is the co-director of this food waste project called Klickitat, Don't Throw It Away, for the Confederated Tribes. She says with food waste,
we are looking at the decomposition. And so it's inherently, the idea of death and transition, which makes people uncomfortable a lot of the time.
In 2024, the Confederated Tribes got a U.S. Department of Agriculture grant to get started. This bokashi fermenting system, what Sanders is digging through, is one way they're addressing food waste. It uses bran to break down the food and create nutrient-rich soil. DRC Abraham is the project's contractor. Abraham says seeing people engage with the food waste program is really exciting and rewarding. And
understanding the importance of diverting food waste, it makes me happy, and it makes me feel like my work that I put into it is worth it.
In about a year, the tribe's food waste recovery initiatives have already diverted about 2 metric tons of the stuff. All that waste used to go into the landfill. Now, the soil they create goes into local people's gardens. And there's so much recovered food waste that there's too much of it to process. Winter temperatures mean the food breaks down more slowly. Even chickens are eating some of the highest quality food waste. We're here at Culture Night, a weekly program held throughout the school year at the Mission Longhouse. 7-year-old Quinn French is learning to take care of her food waste. She plays a game called Recover Our Resources. It challenges children to pick the correct place for each type of food waste. Now, she gets a prize.
I like slime, but my parents wouldn't like it because we have carpet. Yeah.
Kathleen Elliott brings Quinn here nearly every Wednesday. She's her grandma.
This is what grandparents do. For my grandmother taught me how to take care of the land and take care of ourselves also. And so I'm just doing what my grandmother did.
Ultimately, Elliott says she wants Quinn to learn how to take care of the food and land like she did years ago. Elliott says we're all here to take care of the earth. In Mission, Oregon, I'm Anna King.
And finally, here in the Pacific Northwest, we're due for the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. And when any large earthquake hits, one of the major concerns is a phenomenon called soil liquefaction. That's when ground shaking causes the soil beneath our feet to turn into a soupy liquid mess. Now, a research team from Portland State University is working on a way to stop liquefaction before it happens. OPB science reporter Jess Burns has that story.
There's a small tent in an engineering lab at Portland State University, the heavy-duty type used to store things outside.
This is what I call the magic tent, where all the chemistry and all the reactions are happening.
PhD student Fadzai Svanai steps inside the magic tent with a bucket full of deep blue liquid. She places it beside a clear, chest-high tank filled with layers of white sand and silty gray-brown soil.
This silt layer is the one which is most common here in Oregon, Portland.
Svanai drops a hose into the bucket and starts a pump that will simulate in the tank what they want to happen underground. The liquid is a mix of nutrients, soil microbes, and blue food coloring to make the solution easier to track as it seeps through the sediment layers. That's where the real magic happens. When the liquid is in the soil, the tiny, hungry soil microbes will gobble up the nutrients and produce nitrogen gas.
So when you think about those microbes and what they're doing, are they burping or are they farting?
I think they're doing both, burping and farting. Yeah.
However you look at it, these microbes are key allies in an innovative new technique to prevent damage to buildings during major earthquakes. They'll guard against a phenomenon called soil liquefaction.
If you think back to the 70s and 80s kind of B movies of quicksand, that's what we're talking about in terms of liquefaction.
Kayla Sorensen is a PhD candidate at Portland State. In these movies, the hero would unwittingly run into a pit of quicksand and get sucked in.
Can you imagine how a building would react if the ground underneath it suddenly turned into this substance?
Basically, it would tilt or sink. Liquefaction can happen when vibrations from an earthquake hit soil that's fully saturated with water. These saturated soils are most often found along rivers and waterways, where the water table is high. That's also where many cities are built. Diane Moog is a geotechnical engineer working on the project.
Here in Portland, we have a lot of structures in Oregon that were built before we had a real understanding of the seismic risk in the area.
One of the most concerning spots is the critical energy infrastructure hub in Portland.
It's where 90% of Oregon's fuel is stored or handled.
These so-called tank farms along the Willamette River are built on high-risk liquefiable soils. The state is taking steps to bring the tanks up to seismic standards. But if the Cascadia earthquake hits before that's done, emergency officials are expecting chemical leaks, fires, and a devastating disruption to fuel supplies. Again, Kayla Sorensen.
The one thing that we're really fighting against is time, because it is not a matter of if it will happen, it is a matter of when it will happen.
The team's microbe-based solution to prevent soil liquefaction relies on being able to decrease the amount of water in the soil, says project engineer Arash Khosrovivar.
The idea is that for the soils to liquefy, you need to have 100% saturation. This method works by reducing that saturation ratio from 100% down to whatever level required for it not to be liquefiable.
So picture it. You have a building on liquefiable soil. You drill 2 shallow wells, one on either side, says Moog.
You inject the treatment on one side of the infrastructure and then do some extraction on the other side. You can induce that treatment solution to flow underneath the structure and react to the soils underneath.
The microbes that naturally live in the soil feast and produce tiny air bubbles that push the water out from between the grains of soil. Displace enough water, and voila, no liquefaction, no matter how big the earthquake. In a field test, Khosrovivar says those burping microbes reduce the soil saturation readings considerably, below 95%.
About 2 weeks into the treatment, they dropped down and they stayed down for like 5 years.
Then they were able to retreat the site in 2025 to similar result, but their testing continues.
This method, if it works, with a big if, but if it does work, then it would have a real impact.
Because there's no lack of buildings in the Pacific Northwest that could use some shoring up before the next major earthquake hits. I'm Jess Burns, reporting.
Appreciate you listening to Seattle Now, and thanks to our generous donors for your support. Take a moment to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app. Our production team includes Caroline Chamberlain-Gomez, Vaughn Jones, Andy Hurst, Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you soon.